Yeah, it was somewhat inevitable that when I made a much longer video, there ended up being some things I didn't elaborate on enough, or on the opposite end, spend way too much time explaining something that everyone understands at first glance. This is basically just going to be a follow-up to my previous video talking about my general gripes with Payday 3, where I'm elaborating on some of the things I said in that video, and why I said them, or proposed the ideas I did in the way I did, and also addressing some things you guys brought up that are also things that should likely be addressed. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about skills again, because I spent so long on them last time. What I want to address here is feedback on what I propose to change with skills, as well as some of my own changes to proposed skill trees, since some of them are just as archaic as they were in Skills 1.0 with my initial proposal. For starters, the idea I had about making some weapon skills universal but with reduced efficiency on other weapons. Specifically for the reduced efficiency part, that was my own way of attempting to prevent a situation like Skills 1.0 had far more often than it should have, which was everyone always using the same batch of skills despite what weapon they were using. Effectively, it was to prevent another ammo funnel replenish incident from happening with the updated skill system. Of course, Starbreeze can use this on even more skills in specific trees and see how the community feels about them, especially with something like Speed Loader from the shotgun or applying per bullet, being extremely fun with accurate SMGs but being terrible for marksman rifles not called the FIC-22 if it was just applied to every weapon as is. As for changes to my own skill trees, it's pretty much just a couple changes to the Silent Assassin skill tree, since there's nothing that stood out wrong about the Toolsmith skill tree I proposed. At least not to anybody who saw it, I think. I mean, it's almost like I've had half a year to think about that one. I'd hope I'd worked out the kinks in that amount of time. Going in a similar order to what the original proposal was, my addendum to drop cloth returning would be rather simple. The base version would work just like Judo Chop in the Ghost Tree, at least as far as people seeing the body is concerned, instead of just not being detectable at all. However, the 10 seconds until a radio goes off would be the same, at least if you didn't ace the skill, since I changed that to automatically answer the radio of any guard you kill with a silenced weapon, if it hasn't gone off yet. Now in Tier 3, my adjustments to Slippery's return would be centered around the aced version of the skill. Instead of just being escorted out of a secure area, you'd now be able to uncuff yourself without masking up. However, if you're caught by a guard after you've already been handcuffed, you're forced to put on your mask if you lockpick your handcuffs again. Effectively, this would make it so you can avoid masking up once at the cost of being in searching. It also just makes it so that the skill synergizes with itself a lot more rather than being two completely separate abilities in one. These are just a couple changes to two outlier skills I wrote up that, upon reflection, as well as outside perspectives, really seem to stand out for all the wrong reasons. So I adjusted them to fit better not only with themselves, but also with the way the game works. It also functions to bring back another skill from the old systems, how about that being cover-up, though this works with silenced weapons instead of takedowns. Yeah, remember those? I only remembered them when I was seeing how far into syntax I could go with a loud build without any suppressors equipped. Turns out the whole way after using a takedown on this guy. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I also do want to say before I move on why I put these two together, and that's because, theoretically, having these two skill trees next to each other would end up encouraging side climbing, since placing tools counts as an illegal action when you're unmasked. So, say it's a stealth build, you want to mark enemies through micro cameras, you get a few skills from the tool tree for more cameras, and then other skills from the Silent Assassin tree for general stealth purposes. Or if you're going loud, you get ones for marking enemies and moving faster near marked enemies, because, it's more speed, you're not really going to complain about that. Before I move on from skills entirely, there is a skill I want to mention from Skills 1.0 that I just want to address my stance on, that being Clean Slate. Basically, the way this skill worked was by making an armor repair kit function like a singular charge of an armor bag, but only for your first plate of armor. I know some of you will probably be upset with me saying this, but I think it should stay gone. Sure, an argument could be made for bringing it back on low armor plate setups, but that's also what armor bags are for, as well as things like Armored Up 2 negating even needing to use the armor bag past putting it down, the minigun's third overskill level leading to obscene things like this when you build into it, as well as Bounty Hunter on techies repairing an armor plate of any kind on kill. Techies that, by the way, also drop an armor repair kit. I'd hope that would speak for itself in terms of how stupidly powerful that would be. On the topic of power, I just want to address my thoughts on the current balance of the game, as a lot of people have noticed it trending more and more towards a Payday 2-esque horde shooter, where instead of asking how you handle the cops coming at you, you're asking how you kill all the cops swarming you. Now, I don't know exactly what I would make the enemies do to make them more difficult individually, and I'm not going to pretend I know what to change with them, but I do know that more enemies in the map isn't the way to go in the long term. We've already seen their performance breaking a bit when there's too many. It's like they're trying to scroll Twitter while the techie is using all the bandwidth on microwaving or pizza rolls. In simple terms, I don't know what to change specifically, but make the enemies more challenging individually instead of only in a group. Moving on to other things I talked about in my last video that I want to address, I can't believe I forgot about why we all stayed in the bathrooms for an hour in the first place and touched the sky when the first challenge system came out. It's because XP was given for getting a certain amount of kills. Needless to say, I don't think that idea should come back in really any fashion. However, the reason for this idea doesn't necessarily need to stay either if there was another way to unlock attachments for weapons that didn't rely on weapon leveling, like, say, getting a specific attachment via a challenge and then being able to equip it on specific weapons, like completing a heist in stealth, unlocking the obelisk silencer on every gun. You still need to pay for it when customizing the gun, but that's what I'd ideally change the attachment system to, since weapon leveling really isn't all that fun no matter how you go about it. Now on to some things that you guys made me aware of for talking about, and I'm going to start with some of the current modifiers and how annoying they can be, starting with the least offensive, the ones I'd propose changes to, that being tactical flashlights. This modifier adds a light on the front of shields, basically meaning you can't stare at them for too long or you suffer a similar effect to a flashbang. This isn't even a difficulty tweak, it's just an annoyance, so to change shields to be a bit more difficult, I'd say to change this to just make their glass viewpoint metal so you can't shoot it and then have to either shoot their exposed gun hand, use a shot grenade, or hit them around the shield instead. You still have options to defeat them, this would just close off the easiest option to bypass, besides pressing the shot grenade button. Nothing will ever beat that in terms of effectiveness. On the other side of the modifier coin, I want to talk about a couple stealth modifiers, Lead Guard and Cerberus Core. Starting with Cerberus Core, having basically the whole point of the Black Hat tree completely removed isn't fun at all, so instead of it resetting runtimes, I propose instead to make it just cut the amount of runtimes you can use in half. At least on the map cameras. Your own micro cameras, if you brought them, would and should remain unaffected considering they're, well, your own tools. Of course, being able to runtime your own micro cameras would require them adjusting that skill, but, you know, ideally how I would change it. Lead Guard, on the other hand, is an interesting challenge, since I do like the idea of a wandering guard who goes wherever he pleases without a real predetermined route, but the fact that his radio goes off repeatedly every 90 seconds, meaning if you kill him at any point before escape, you're screwed out of stealth. That's annoying. So I have two options to remedy this. Either you can use Intimidation on the Lead Guard to negate his radio going off repeatedly, which would also give a reason to use that skill tree in stealth, by the way, or make it so that only his first radio counts towards the total amount of radios you can spend in the heist in total, meaning you can still remove one more guard before entering searching, and most importantly, meaning you can still salvage that stealth run instead of moving to the restart heist button faster than speedrunners do on failed attempts. Now, is this likely going to be addressed in the March update? Possibly, but these are modifiers people dislike right now, and should get updated sooner rather than later. The last thing I want to bring up is a possible prestige or infamy system once you hit the maximum level and start climbing up the infamy of this game, which isn't anything to write home about currently. I do think a part of that is just how few cosmetics you get for being at such a high point though, and by few I mean quite literally none. Could there be specific paint jobs or mask patterns or the like that you get for hitting certain points? Maybe like getting one for every 10 infamy levels past the initial 150 if they're one use, or getting one every 50 infamy levels if they're permanent. You know, things like that. That would give people a reason to keep grinding. Speaking of, I just want to talk about Twitch drops. I hate these. Not because they're bad. No, I hate them because they're items for the game that you're encouraged to not play the game to earn. If something like bringing back or expanding on challenges is going to happen, can the Twitch drops please be repurposed as rewards for some of those? I know some people would like to have the Almir mask, and it'd be fitting if they got it for finding and shooting Almir's toast in 20 heists instead of going on to an unrelated streaming website. My distaste for Twitch drops aside, more cosmetics is not really a bad thing, doubly so with just how much customization Payday already offers with the multitude of masks already available. Anyway, that was just what I wanted to say about some of the things I feel like I could have explained better or just wanted to change from my last video. For the foreseeable future though, I'm probably going to be taking a bit of a break from Payday videos unless something significant happens. Since Resident Evil Requiem is on the horizon, I'll be taking some time to enjoy that and make a video relating to Resident Evil as well, though I doubt I'll make a video on Requiem specifically. Until then, I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you take care. Also, Starbreeze, please, just release the soundtrack on Steam. I will give you money for it.